Welcome back to our YouTube channel, The Book Digest. In today's episode, we're diving into a powerful and practical summary of Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Now, this is not your typical self-help book. Forget all that relentless positivity. Manson argues that our very obsession with being happy might just be what's making us so miserable. Let's get right into it.
And right off the bat, Manson hits us with this incredible paradox. The core idea here is that when you're constantly chasing happiness, constantly trying to feel good, you're only reminding yourself of what you think you lack. It's a trap. And according to Manson, just understanding that you're in this trap is the very first step to getting out of it.
So where does this problem even start? Well, Manson diagnoses a key issue with our modern mindset, and he gives it a pretty memorable name, the feedback loop from hell.
This slide lays out the cycle perfectly. You start with a totally normal negative emotion. Maybe some anxiety or sadness or anger. But then, because our culture is obsessed with nonstop positivity, you feel guilty or like you're broken for even feeling that way. And that creates this whole new layer of suffering. You start feeling bad about feeling bad.
And here's exactly how that spiral takes hold. Look at step 1. You start with some initial anxiety about something real, like maybe a big presentation at work. That's normal. But then this meta-anxiety kicks in. You start feeling anxious about the fact that you're anxious. And just like that, you're in the loop, turning a simple, everyday problem into a personal crisis, all because you judged a natural emotion as some kind of failure.
Okay, so if the diagnosis is this crazy feedback loop, what's the cure? This brings us to the subtle art itself. And spoiler alert, it's not about being indifferent to everything. It's not about becoming some apathy monster. It's about being selective. It's about consciously choosing what is truly worth your energy.
And this is so crucial. A good life isn't a life without problems. That's a total fantasy. A good life is a life filled with good problems. Problems you actually enjoy solving. Struggles you're willing to endure because they line up with what you really value. Happiness? That just shows up along the way while you're busy with the important stuff.
And this slide just makes the distinction crystal clear. On the left, you've got bad values. They're external, totally out of your control. Think about it. If your goal is to be liked by everyone, you are going to be miserable. But good values on the right, they're internal. They're process-based. You can choose to be honest or creative right here, right now, no matter what happens. And that's where your real power is.
Manson argues this is probably the single most important question you can ask yourself. Forget, what do you want to enjoy? The real gut check is this. What pain are you willing to sustain? What are you willing to suffer for? Because your answer reveals what you truly value, way more than a list of goals ever could. It's the ultimate litmus test.
All right, let's move on to the next part of the prescription, and you'll see how this all builds. Now, this one can be a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. It's about taking complete, radical ownership of your life, no matter what circumstances you're in.
This chart is absolutely key to understanding this book. Manson makes a huge distinction between fault and responsibility. Look, something bad can happen to you that is 100% not your fault. But how you choose to respond to it, that is always your responsibility. Focusing on blame just keeps you stuck in the past. Focusing on your response, that empowers you in the present.
Now, let's talk about actually getting things done. Most of us think motivation works like this. First, you feel this big wave of inspiration, and then you finally take action. We kind of sit around, waiting for the feeling to strike before we get started.
But Manson just flips this completely on its head. He says action isn't the effect of motivation, it's the cause of it. It's like tipping over the first domino. That first tiny, small action creates momentum. That momentum generates inspiration, and that inspiration leads to even more action. Don't wait for the feeling, go create it by just doing something.
So when you put all this together, choosing your values, taking responsibility, taking action, where does it all lead? Well, it leads us to the book's deepest philosophical point, which is really about how we find meaning in the grand scheme of things.
This might sound a little grim, but stick with me, because Manson argues it's the most powerful tool we have. Confronting the reality that our time is finite, that it's running out, is the ultimate filter. It just cuts through all the trivial nonsense and forces us to decide what genuinely, truly matters.
And this is the beautiful takeaway. It's not about being morbid or depressed. It's about freedom. When you really accept that you are going to die, a lot of the small, petty things you care about, like what someone said on social media or whether you're always right, They just fade away. You are liberated to focus on your real values.
And so we end with the central question of the entire book, a direct challenge to every single one of us. This is the subtle art in a nutshell. It is the conscious, deliberate, and ongoing choice of where to invest your very limited supply of energy and attention. So, what will you choose?